Hello and welcome to the Supernatural track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and tonight we're talking about characters who only appeared in one episode, but we wish they'd have come back for more. Before we dive into that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Carole.
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I've been a fan of Supernatural since season 3. I started writing fanfic in 2012, and I love coming on continual panels to talk about Supernatural.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Melissa and Kitty.
Hi, this is Kitty. She and I've been watching Supernatural since the pilot aired, and that's cool. That's all I've got tonight.
Okay, Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue, also known as Candygramme. I started Supernatural with the pilot, wrote my first Supernatural fanfic in 2005, and I've stayed with it since then.
Very good. And Melissa's having a fangirl moment over there.
And I'm going to have another one in just a second, so forgive me.
And I never know, I can spell your name, but I never know how to pronounce it.
It's okay. I don't know how to pronounce it either.
From embarrassment and share how to say it.
It's no problem. Dimeliora, but I go by Dime with basically everybody at this point, so that's good. I write ridiculous fan fiction, and I dream about Supernatural at night, which is unfortunate for me at this point.
Well, I ask about the name pronunciation because Carole, Melissa, and Ann know for years I was reading something that I thought was French, and I read the name as Fictional Alimons. And then Carole said, "Oh, you mean Fictional Lemons?" And I was like, yeah, never mind. I'm just going to go in the corner here. I'm so French and fancy. No, Fictional Lemons. So now I just ask, Ann?
Hi, I'm Ann Wicker, and I was a latecomer to the Supernatural fandom, but I went completely down the rabbit hole, and I love the fanfic. I love the show still, and I'm an unabashed Dean girl, and here we go.
Yeah. I also came late to the party, fell in love halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months to be ready for season 12, discovered fanfic in the hiatus and never came back up for air. And so, yeah, definitely down that rabbit hole. It is long and deep, and I hope we never hit bottom. So, in music, we talk about one-hit wonders. We talk about bands that had their big single and were never heard from again. In Supernatural, while there are a lot of recurring characters or characters who at least get back for 1 or 2 or 3 episodes, there are also some pretty interesting people that we met once and never got to see again. Now, some of them have gone on to long and healthy lives in fan fiction, far outweighing their presence on the screen. But, others vanished without a trace. So let's talk about some of those people we wish we'd have had more time to get to know. And we're just going to go around and around and around until we run out of time. So starting with Carole.
Well, I'm going to seize the moment and mention Missouri Mosley, who technically we saw in a second episode, but I'm going to pretend that one didn't happen. So we met Missouri. We met Missouri in season 1 when Sam and Dean returned to the Lawrence, Kansas homestead. And she is a psychic, and they realize that she's the one who first told John about the whole monstery world out there when they had read in his diary that he went to Missouri and learned the truth. At first, everybody thought he meant the state, but no, he meant Missouri, the psychic, as beautifully portrayed by the incredible Loretta Devine, who just did such a fantastic job. And unfortunately, fortunately for Supernatural, she was in such demand, they were never able to get her back And in fact, it is due to her absence that we actually got the character of Bobby Singer, when they wanted somebody who kind of knew stuff, and that's where they created Bobby, which is wonderful in its own right. However, we never got Missouri back. And she was in one episode so fully fleshed. And indeed, in fan fiction, her character is way long lived. She's lived many, many different long and happy lives. She's a wonderful character to pull in because of her gifts and her knowledge of the world and her involvement with John and the boys, and particularly with Sam and dealing with his psychic gifts and everything. She was just a wonderful character, which is why we forget the second episode she was in, because it was ridiculous and they'd done her wrong. So yeah, that one didn't happen. So Missouri, a wonderful, wonderful one-shot character. Wished we could have had her more, but at least you can go to fanfic and see her lots of times in lots of ways and still get to enjoy what a wonderful character she was.
Okay. Melissa.
Mrs. Butters for me. She was such an interesting character. She gave the boys a little slice of that home life that they never had, that when Mary came back, she couldn't provide. You know, I love Mary. I love me some Mary. But I love Mrs. Butters because she gave the boys gleefully some of that home life, that nurturing that they needed. And, you know, when she wasn't really a monster, even though she was a creature, the things that she did had a strong motivation for them. And when it was pointed out, hey, no, you're wrong, she did a really good about face, and I loved that. But what I love most of all is when she left, some of what she gave to the boys stuck around. And we know that because when Dean comes with that poor sad cake for Jack's birthday, it gave me that feeling of, okay, look, they're never going to have that Thanksgiving dinner kind of thing, but they at least understand what that taste of normal is like, and they can take pieces of that and carry that on forward. And I love that she was able to give that to them.
Okay. Sue.
Well, my favorite character only appeared once and never again, and hasn't really featured in fanfic since, which is a terrible shame. And that's my second TV boyfriend, Elliot Ness, in Time After Time, and played by Nicholas Lee. And I think he really did well as Elliot Ness, despite my exploding ovaries. I really think that he should have recurred somehow, somewhere.
Okay, I totally agree. And he helped Dean learn to dress 1940s untouchable.
Yes.
And for that, we love him too.
Beautiful.
As well as that cool lady who was kind of their Bobby, who ran the.
Yeah, I loved her.
She was awesome.
And she got to plan a good one on Dean there.
That whole
And
episode.
know that she also had to, fit his inseam, and I suspect there was maybe a little handsiness going on there.
Yeah, that whole episode was really, really good. I loved it.
That was a great episode. Dime, how about you?
Let me just wipe a little bit of Dean in 1940s, so drool off for a second, and then so I think I messed up the assignment. The first character that I had on my list is actually Emma from the Slice Girls, and not necessarily because I wanted to see her again, but because I thought that she was an amazing character to explain the relationship between Dean and Sam, because the show gives us hundreds of alleyways to see Dean willing to inflict violence, very sudden and impulsive violence, in the interest of protecting Sam, but we don't get to see that usually going backwards. And so having Sam kill Dean's technically daughter, is Sam being willing to kill the normal life and the idea of a family and everything else in just that 1 second to save Dean's life. And I thought that was fascinating. I would totally not have minded them doing more episodes where they discuss that dynamic. But they never mention her again, as far as I know. So, oops.
Okay.
It was
And
on the spinny room of the writers' topics where they were throwing down.
yeah,
Yeah,
She does appear in fanfic fairly
Mhm.
often.
yeah. Well, my the one that I really loved and that I wish that we had seen him much earlier was Lee Webb in Last Call. And of course, I'm a huge Christian Kane fan, and I've known that he and of course Christian Kane figures in so much fan fiction, J2 fan fiction. But I've long loved the actor since his days on Angel and through Leverage. And so anyway, I was so glad to see, it was so much fun for me to see he and Jensen play off each other in these roles, and then for them to talk about how Lee went hunting with John and Dean while Sam was in college at Stanford. And I just wish that we had been able to see that in flashback or something, in more than one episode, because I think he was, and also I think it was interesting because Dean at first was I think he was sort of jealous of the life that Lee had appeared to have built, owning the bar and being out of the life, sort of. And I think Dean was at first jealous of that. And then when he realized how Lee got that bid at normal life, that Dean knew he couldn't have done that, and because we all know Rocky's Bar was his dream. And so having a bar called Swayze's too, that was funny. But anyway, so Lee Webb was probably my favorite of the one-shot characters that we got. And yeah, I could go on and on, but I'll stop.
I would have bet money you were the one who was going to bring up Christian Kane. And I think, the other thing is Jensen and Kristen have been friends for a long time. And so I had read an interview where when Jensen asked him to play the role, he said, "You're going to kick my ass, aren't you?" Yeah. So I'm going to say the shapeshifter therapist from the episode where Sam and Dean and Jack all go and agree to role play, and then the therapy gets really, really real, really, really fast. I was just I loved that they actually did end up in a real conversation, but the whole concept that she could become the image of the person who somebody in therapy needed to have that conversation with was just powerful, because there are so many ways that plays out in therapy with role playing and all of that, but not with the likeness of that person reacting to you. Maybe Chatbot will give that to us, but I just, that was such a cool idea. And I'd love to have her set up, her own little therapy for hunters trying to get out of the life who like need to apologize to the people they didn't save or whatever, have that conversation, because I just thought that was such a fantastic idea. Back to you, Carol.
I'm going to go with Delphine Seydoux, who is in the vessel. She is the French woman that Dean goes back in time with because they need to get the hand of God. And it was really striking because we don't see many women hunters, certainly women of letters, outside of poor Josie, who got possessed and turned into Abaddon. So it was really nice to see a woman in that role and in that time period. She was very strong, very very relatable. You know, I actually read a really terrific fanfic where she was saved and brought back to current time. And it was just wonderful because she just, outside of having to adjust to the technology and things, she was able to, like, you know, because she was a hunter and a woman of letters, she was able to pick up that kind of thing. She was just a really interesting character, and it was just too bad that, as so many of them do, she, you know, got sacrificed for the greater good. Because I just thought, you know, there would have been a lot of interesting stories in terms of what had she already done and what could she have done. You know, of course, tragically cut short, but that was a really terrific one shot, I thought.
Okay, Melissa.
Since Kitty literally ate my homework, I gotta check my phone for my notes. She did, brat. Don and Maggie Stark, so that was James Marsters and Charisma. I loved those two. They were such fun. They just ridiculously fun. And I didn't watch Angel or Buffy, so I don't like, I know, like, I'm familiar with them just in the fact that they were in the show, but I'm not fangirling them when I say that. They were just fun. I loved that episode. I thought it was just, it was interesting to see all that bickering and just see how the guys handled it. And we know how much Dean loves witches. So that was always, that was extra super secret, super fun. And the fact that we're just like, you know, just stop, you two, just stop. So that was fun for me.
Okay, Sue.
Okay, I'm going to go with Dean Winchester, played by Chad Everett. And sadly, he is no more. But he did a really good turn as older Dean, hitting on the maid and that kind of thing. I loved every minute of him.
He played that so spectacularly. He was amazing in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember watching him as a younger girl on, you know, what was it, Medical Center or something, when he was the young doctor and, you know, crushing on. And he was still so handsome, and he just embodied Dean so beautifully.
Yeah. And his face when the girl he was hitting on told him how precious he was, how cute. You know, I just loved that performance.
Yeah, he did great with that. Dime?
Yeah.
I am gonna go with the siren from Sex and Violence. For a million reasons, not the least of which is the ship I happen to be sinking on. But I found that it was just it would have been so interesting to see that character come back again, for them to close that sort of open storyline. It bugs me the same way the voicemail bothers me, where it's just this open wound that kind of sits in both of the Winchester boys and they never close it. It's never sutured, it's never shut. And that siren plays them so well. And to see them like bring that back and close that loop and deal with him would have been fascinating. But they did not do that thing.
And of course, anybody who watched True Blood also knew him as Hoyt, which made it even more interesting. Anne.
Well, I'm torn between two things, but since you mentioned the Chad Everett, Dean Winchester, I liked Patrick, the 900-year-old gambling witch.
Yes.
And I just thought he was a really, really great character. And the pathos at the end when she says, you know, she thought she could do this and she couldn't. And he obviously really, really loved her. And again, he was not, you know, he may have been sort of evil, and, you know, and he had, you know, people had gambled away their life, and he was 900 years old lives, and he was 900 years old. But he also let that one guy go so he could see his granddaughter's bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, I guess, and so, and he didn't always, he lost the one older guy who was in bed with the two young women, who he had, he was like, I threw away my glasses, and he was so happy. But it was just, I was intrigued by that character and wished that they could have run across him again at some point and had, because they did run across some people again. And I just thought he was a character that they didn't, that could have been in several other episodes and been really great. I would have loved to have seen he and Rowena,
Yeah.
That would have been interesting.
Oh yeah.
Great fan fiction. How about
I'm
writing it?
sure
Yeah.
that they could have come to an agreement of many different kinds.
Uh-huh.
And she never really let that get away. Yeah. I wanted to see Jesse and Caesar again, the two guys from the Chitters.
Yeah, that
I
one.
want Sam and Dean to show up at a bed and breakfast somewhere and find out that it was run by Jesse and Caesar. I think they're down in Mexico running a bar or something. And I
They
would
had horses. They were going to do horses.
Yeah. I would love to see a story where Sam and Dean are working a case and run into Jesse and Caesar, who are out of the life, and they reconnect. Not that they drag them back into the life, but I like those guys and I wish them well, and I wanted to see them succeeding, but I wanted them to show up again. So yeah.
Happily, there are stories like that in fanfic.
There are.
Yeah.
That's why we love fan fiction so much.
That's
Carol.
Gosh, and there's just, I just want to say what a credit it is that there are so many possibilities and so many people we could mention. And for the list that I made, some of you have even mentioned others where I totally forgot, like, oh yeah, Patrick and the Siren. There's so many where they just had these interesting characters who were not cutouts and were not caricatures or anything, but really seized our imagination and, pulled at our heartstrings, that we have a whole panel where we can talk about just them because, the field is so rich. I'm going to go with Deputy Kathleen Hudak from the Benders.
Oh yeah.
She is the
Yeah.
smart and, smart as a whip police officer who, Dean finally realizes he cannot bamboozle or charm. So he just speaks to her directly. And that's where he, is then able to make headway because her brother, in fact, has also disappeared. And she was so smart and so dogged, even when things started going downhill. And I just really admired her strength and her smarts, and the way she dealt with the bad news and stuff. And frankly, the way she just kind of cleaned up the loose ends, and nobody was going to be the wiser, because you know what? that was good. And she would have been a great Leo to have them run into again. Like look at Donna, where we ran into Donna and we ran into Jody and they became recurring. Excuse me. She would have been a great recurring character to have seen again. I just really, really liked and admired her.
And we had a perfect opportunity with that because the Benders happened in Hibbing. And later on, we have Hibbing 911. And so I kept thinking, oh, they're going to bring her in for the sheriff's conference. So I don't know whether she retired after all that or what, but that would have been a perfect time to bring her back. And I'm guessing they didn't think of it if she wasn't available, but I would have loved to have seen her again.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Melissa?
Dorothy Gale. We had, we didn't see much of her, right? And off they go into Oz. But when they came back, we could have had little bits and slivers of her woven throughout the story. And yet, we didn't get it. And that was such a missed opportunity, because she could have come back with Charlie to our world. She didn't have to stay in Oz, or she could have been bouncing back and forth. There could have even just been like references to her, but no, we don't because, reasons. But I wish we had seen more of her because I thought there was a lot of potential there. Carol,
agree.
don't laugh at me.
No, that would have been great. And I would have much preferred Charlie to have gone off into Oz than to have left us the way she did.
Yeah.
And they still could have given Felicia Day plenty of room for a very busy schedule. And oh, Charlie, she's in Oz. I would have much preferred that. Sue?
Okay, the episode Good God, Y'all had Titus Welliver playing War, and he was so sneaky and so unrepentant and just so horribly smarmy and evil. I love that character. And we didn't see him again, and poor boy, he lost his finger, but at the same time, I really enjoyed him. I liked all of the horsemen, but he stood out to me.
Done.
Yes.
I am gonna go with Jesse Turner, the Antichrist, who is brought in for one episode in season 5, where Sam and Dean remove from him all hope of a future in a good career as being an Antichrist. And then they go on to remove even more hope for him to do it. And we never see him again. And it would have been so great if he had just shown up at some point, this dejected teenage boy, and said, I have no future. What do you want me to do now? And then we could have seen how that would grow, what happens when you have kind of the opposite of what Sam had. You were born to be evil, but you just didn't pull it off too good. It could have been a really interesting path to take and a journey to see the boys go on with this younger person. And we never see him again. He decides to bug out and leave.
I would have loved to have seen him show up and bond with Jack, and they could have both, commiserated. But yeah, I'm all powerful, but can that get me a date? No.
We could have had an entire almost ruined the world club, and just the group of them could get together every Wednesday and play D&D and end the world. It would have been great.
And he took it. I mean, yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, and I love that their idea of sending him so far away is Australia. Guys, there are flights. I mean,
Yeah, but they're long flights. They're very long flights.
And Australia was a penal colony, so
he can teleport. I just always thought, in Australian shows, do they send people here? I mean, maybe they send them to Canada. Send them so far away, Canada. Anne?
Well, Jesse Turner was one of my very favorites. I watched that one today, and so it's really fresh on my mind. And I really love that one. But another law enforcement officer that I think they didn't use enough was Detective Diana Ballard, played by Linda Blair. And I just thought she was great, and she handled learning about the supernatural stuff better than Victor Hendrickson did. And she also handled learning that the guy that she thought was in love with her was such a douche. And so I just thought they could have used her again, kind of like they did Victor, running into her, or running back through wherever they were. Now I don't remember, but I just thought that they could have used that character again. She was bright, she was smart, she was dogged, and I think that there could have been other plots with her involved easily. And then of course the end where Dean talks about pea soup is really funny.
I wanted to see the two guys from the Real Ghostbusters who were cosplaying Sam and Dean at the Supernatural convention.
Yes.
In my mind, they did a Smith and Wesson, and because they said, well, I fix copiers, and And I work for a call center, and wouldn't it be great to actually save the world? And in my mind, they go home and they look at each other and go, well, why can't we? And then they chuck their call center and their copiers, and they go off and become hunters. And they're kind of the real life Smith and Wesson, who go forward and chase down ghosts. And it would be so great if at some point Sam and Dean ran across them and go, don't you remember us? And I just would have loved to have seen that kind of change their life and give them confidence to walk away from the 9 to 5, grind. Back to you, Carol.
Oh gosh, so I'm going to mention Ronald Resnick from Night Shift. I just love him.
Yeah.
He was
The Mandroid.
the Mandroids. It was just so tragic. He was so smart. He figured it all out. He figured everything out in the eye flash and everything. And I think Sam and Dean were even like really impressed, even though they had to tell him that there was no such thing as a mandroid, which really there isn't. But, just the way his tenacity in figuring this out and pursuing the clues and all of this stuff. And then, of course, sadly, his misguided attempt to try and fix it. And, subsequently he's killed. But he was so engaging, and you felt for him so much. And like, on the one hand, you're like so proud of him because you're like, wow, he really did this. And it's like, no. So yeah, he was really, it was sad, but he was just really good about understanding what was going on out there. And I just have to give him great, great props for that.
Okay. Melissa.
Okay, hang with me for a second. Samifer in that white suit. I needed more. I needed a lot more. I don't care what the plot was. Don't care at all. Don't care. Put Sam in that white suit and let him be evil, horrible, awful, taunting Dean. And I'm a Dean girl, but I just needed more of that. I'm sorry. Don't even care about the plot. Just need more.
Okay. Sue.
I'm going to go with a very little known guy. If you remember in What Is and What Should Never Be, Mackenzie Gray played the genie, the djinn. And he looked so menacing, so awful. Full disclosure, Mackenzie is a friend of mine. I live in Vancouver, and that's something that, helps. But after he'd done his first day on set, he was told to keep the makeup on because it took hours to do it. And he tried to get a cab home, and nobody would pick him up. So I think he deserves a shout out.
Yeah. I would have loved to have seen more Jin-centric episodes, and certainly there have been some wonderful fanfics with Jins.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Dime.
So I am I have been a nerd my whole life. So Ben Edlund and I go back very, very far.
Yeah.
He's also the first musical that ever made me cry. So congratulations for that too, Ben. But Dracula from Monster Movie, the ridiculous incel vampire in the black and white, like super cheesy old school horror movie vibe. I would have adored watching another Ben Edlund episode where they wake up one morning and everything is in black and white again, and that stupid vampire has been following them for months, waiting for revenge. But
On
like,
his motor scooter.
yeah, just bad cartoon revenge. Like, he was a great character because he should have been scary. He was shot so dramatically and so darkly, and he was just funny the whole time. Like, that actor killed that role.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Dracula for monster movie, I think, would be my next one.
Oh, and when he says he has a coupon,
Yeah.
I howl.
When he hopped on his Vespa and putted away, that
Yeah.
Does
Very
this pizza have
dramatically.
garlic on it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. Well, my next choice would be Sonny from Bad Boys, who ran the home for bewildered boys. And I love that character, and I really wish that they had gone back there again, and the flashbacks and the young guy who plays Dean too, and that, although we see him play Dean several times, but I just, that whole episode was really good, and Sonny was so good with Dean and with the later stuff going on. And I really thought that was a great episode that showcased and gave us so much more background about Dean and his loyalty to Sam. Because if it had just been John, Dean would not have left. He would have stayed with Sonny. But it was Sam. He chooses Sam over everybody every time.
Yeah.
And that was one of the strongest ones where he chose Sam. Even as a young man.
Yeah.
That was.
So
I also liked in the episode where that we first met Eileen and they were looking for the Banshee. And I think her name was Marge. She was the older lady who kept hitting on Dean and kept putting her hand on his knee. But she had a lot of personality, a lot of fire. He kind of thought she was cute for trying. And I just thought she had a lot of moxie, and she helped them solve the case. And so I really liked that depiction of an older woman who wasn't dead yet. She could appreciate Dean, and she could help out with the case, and she was on the ball. I really liked that.
yeah, she was much better than the older lady who wanted to get into Sam's pants in that other episode, who was just too much. But she was great, and yeah, that would be me.
Yeah. She was
anyway.
Back to you, Carol.
I thought an interesting character we saw was in About a Boy, when Dean is de-aged, along with Tina. So he had met Tina in a club, and they had many drinks together, and ended up comparing very similar stories of their fairly abandoned childhood, where they had been left to fend for themselves. And of course, she didn't have the whole monster thing going on, but she'd had the, how long can you make the mac and cheese last? And, a lot of time alone at hotels. And so there are a lot of relatable experience between her and Dean. And then she's de-aged, and he ends up re-aging because, of course, he's got to save Sam and the world. And she is unable to do that. She's like, that's fine. I'm going to do over. Like, I didn't do it great the first time, so maybe I can do better this time. And I just thought she was really, this is almost like a syrupy term, but she was plucky, like she was ready to just pick herself up, dust herself off, and go on out there again. And maybe some of that is the resilience of her difficult childhood, much like Dean and Sam are resilient from their difficult childhoods. But, she was like not put off at all, as many people are and would have been, by the transient nature of Sam and Dean's life and their very sketchy upbringing, in terms of being schooled and cared for and all that kind of stuff. And Melissa's thinking John Winchester's A+ parenting. and yet she and Dean were able to find humor together and form a friendship, albeit brief. And I just really liked that. She was not downtrodden. And I also liked the fact that there was nothing sexual about it. She was a person, and he wasn't hitting on her, and they weren't going to end up in the back room somewhere. She was a person, a peer. And, in the life of Dean Winchester's many conquests, I really appreciated that, that he could just back off and they could just be people together and have their shared experiences without it turning into, how lucky could he get?
Melissa?
Well, Kitty has decided that she is going to vote for Fortuna from the hero's journey. She was an interesting character, and she was just bitter enough that I could have seen her at the end of that season doing a little something to give the boys a bit more of an edge to beat Chuck. Like, that was just such a missed opportunity. And if you think about it, really any of the gods and goddesses that had been displaced by Chuck, wouldn't that have been interesting to see them all? We brought back everybody else in season 15, so why not bring back some of the gods and goddesses that the boys had battled with that had an axe to grind against Chuck? That would have been very realistic, and that would have been an interesting way to play that.
Yeah.
Sue?
Well, let's talk about Chris Angel as a douchebag, which was a bit of a disappointing episode. But for me, the guy who played Jay in there, who was also Brad from the Rocky Horror Show, and I thought his performance was very touching. The episode itself left something to be desired, but he really knocked it out of the park with his character.
Yeah, I actually liked that episode, even though it never hits anybody's top 20, but there was a lot I liked about that with the two older magicians.
Yeah.
Because you could kind of see Sam and Dean doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dime.
So I'm not going to say Victor Henriksen because he was on more than one. But Justin Bellow, Nancy the Virgin is the next one up on my list. One, that actress I absolutely adore because she was incredible in Lucifer. But she makes this character that manages to not be one of the two extremes, prudish and hysterical, or overly like bitter and gritty, which seem to be the two ways that those like female tertiary characters kind of fall. She just manages to be pleasant. She's friendly. She's willing to die, and she's a virgin. And all of these things, I think, made her very fascinating. And we never see her again because she is, if you believe the ghost, flayed alive for 45 minutes, an hour, something like that. She's gone forever. We don't even get to see her again in 66 Seals.
My favorite moment with her is when she's talking with the deputy and they're putting out the salt and she's like, I'm going to have so much sex.
Yeah.
And she looks at me and she goes, not with you.
Yeah. That was my favorite moment too.
She's about to die and she still has standards, and you have to respect that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anne?
Well, I'm torn here. I've thought about a couple of them. But I'm gonna go. I have to mention Annie Hawkins from Of Grave Importance. Not only because she slept with all three of them, Bobby, Sam, and Dean, but just because I wanted to know more about her. I wanted to see her not as a ghost, but really hunting. I wish that she had come up and, just even in passing at some point, she intrigued me that she would be, a hunter, and she just mostly hunted on her own, which was dangerous. And I just thought that she was an intriguing character that, again, as we've said about most of these people, she could have been in any number of episodes. And, in an episode not unlike A Weekend at Bobby's, where it shows she and Bobby going off and hunting, or she and Rufus going off and hunting, or a case of hers that then dovetails with a case of that Sam and Dean are on. I mean, it could have been done, and I just thought she was an intriguing missed opportunity. That character.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm curious to see what happened to Marie from fan fiction. Does she met her idol with Carver Edlund, and she got this early success with the High School Musical. And so I want to know that she kind of went on to do Broadway or something, and inspired by all this, and that she's currently working on the Broadway reinvention of this. And just to toss one final other one out there is since we talked about so many, particularly women in law enforcement, the sheriff who finds naked Jack wandering around and
Yeah.
takes him under her wing because she's already got a teenage boy. She kind of knows how this works, and feeds him nougat. And, she was such a down-to-earth mom. Well, we've got this kid here. He's kind of stoned and he's naked. Let's get him something out of the lost and found and feed him some candy bars, and we'll figure this out. She just took it all in stride, and she would have been a great addition as a hunter. Well, folks, I have the feeling over 15 years, there are still a whole lot we haven't mentioned, but we are out of time. So before we wrap up, let's have everybody say where we can find you online. Carol?
You can find me here on Facebook. I'm a lot of the time in Gail's Team Free Will North Carolina group. I'm also on many continual panels, so you can find me around there. I'm on Twitter as true_firesign10. I'm on Instagram as firesign10, and all of my fiction is on AO3 under firesign10. Mind the tags.
Melissa?
You're muted.
Muted.
Probably a good thing. You can find me in the TFWNC Supernatural group that you host here on Continual, talking about Supernatural and sometimes The Boys, or my microfictions on Twitter under Tin Hat Daydreams.
Very good. Sue?
I'm Candygramme practically everywhere. I started on LiveJournal. I'm on AO3. I'm on Discord and Twitter, and just wherever you look. You can't escape me, I tell you.
So on Twitter, I am known as Strega, although I would not recommend following me. And on Archive of Our Own and LiveJournal, I'm Dimeliora. So
Very good. Anne?
On Twitter, I'm Ann Wicker, all one word. On Instagram, I'm Ann.Wicker2, and also on Facebook as Ann Wicker, and I'm in Gail's TFWNC group, and on Continual on many panels. So anyway, that's me.
Okay. I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. I'm on all the social medias under those names, so if you spell them right, you'll find me. I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook, and I am a staff columnist for the Winchester Family Business blog, but most of the time you can find me here on Continual. So thank you so much for a wonderful conversation, and thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up on Continual, so we'll see you online.